to FOBtv, the future of business. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict. I'm a futurist and partner here at TCS, and I want to welcome each of you to the program today. I'm really excited to welcome back our guest, Paul J. Bailo. Paul, thanks for joining us.
Oh, Kevin, great to be here again.
Now, Paul has an extraordinary bio, and let me just give you some of these. He's CEO of PIP Consulting Group. He's head instructor at Yale School of Management. He's an adjunct professor at Columbia University of Applied Analytics. He's an adjunct professor at New York University, and he's an entrepreneur extraordinaire. So we're going to talk about, the topic today is the future of work. So jobs, all these kinds of things. So I can't think of a better person to invite back to talk about that than somebody that's not only teaches lots of people to help them advance their careers, but also counsels them on where to focus their attention. And he hires a lot of them too. So Paul, let's just jump right in there today. And let me ask you before we, dig into the meat of it here, talk to us about some of your first jobs that you had.
Yeah, some of my first jobs, I mean, I've always worked 7 days a week, to be honest with you. So I started working at the supermarket in high school, and then actually worked at Lufthansa German Airlines. I was the longest part-time employee at Lufthansa. I worked every night on the weekend. So I had 3 lives. I would go to school during the day, and then I would work at Lufthansa at night. And the benefit is I get to fly around. And then, but I always stayed with it for 10 years. And then I have, had executive jobs. I worked at Grumman Aerospace early on. And then I worked for the city of New York, helping manage the Transit Authority. So just really looking at the streets and the subways and transportation. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I felt, really satisfied in helping the people of New York. And then I worked for the Federal Reserve Bank, City of New York, Citibank. I worked for them, American Express, also MasterCard. So I've done a lot of blue chip and very entrepreneurial things, but I've always taught at night. So I've always had things going on. I've never really had like one job. I don't think I could really do it. So right? I mean, I had this symbiotic relationship between executive jobs and education. It's like a give back. But as I tell my wife, it keeps my brain sharp because I'm always on the cutting edge, right? I'm always, my students are pushing me, I'm pushing them, and everything I'm doing also comes back to the boardroom. So
that is a unique background. What a fascinating one. You get to learn the inner workings of the city, logistics, transportation, mobility, and then all the rest of the systems overlaid on top of that subway system to understand how everything kind of fits together. Yeah, I loved it. I mean, absolutely loved it. It was early on in my career. Yeah, so I started 11 years old. I had a paper route.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so I had a paper route. Then I did landscaping, mowing everyone's yard. So I do the paper in the morning, on weekends, and in the evening, weekdays. Then I would do the landscape and lawn maintenance. And then I would work on a dairy farm, spraying weeds and haying and all the kind of chores they wanted. So, but I dropped the first 2 jobs after I found out that if I just worked all day in one on the farm, I can make far more money doing that.
Well, to be honest, I think I had more money when I worked for the supermarket as an illegal bagger before it became a job. Because all the people and I was like the worst bagger. Like, you go into the grocery store, I think people felt sorry for me, put in the bag. But I walk home, the really first job, ride my bike with all these nickels, dimes, and quarters. And I still remember one guy felt so bad for me. I did a terrible job for him. His wife gave me a quarter, and he walked back and said, "How much did she give you?" I said, "Oh, a quarter." It's like, "Oh, here's $1 for you." I still remember it. I can't say I did very well in that job. I think it was really I think I did a terrible job being a bagger. But me and my friend had a good time doing it.
I know. Well, that's awesome. What a fun way to start talking about the future of work and jobs than to talk about where we started with ours. And lots of fun. So let's just jump in here. Let's talk about the great resignation that we're all seeing and witnessing and feeling the impact of. I tell you, I can't tell you how many restaurants right here in Boise, Idaho, have signs up just saying, we apologize, but because of staffing issues, we've changed our hours, or we're going to just serve you slower, or, just be nice to us because, the cook's new. I see those signs everywhere. So, talk to us about that and what you're seeing there, and, what does that mean? What's your interpretation of that?
Yeah. So first of all, I don't think it's the great resignation. I know a lot of people think it's that, but I don't. When I look at the data, I really think it's the big pause. I think people, between everything that's happened to them, the stress of work itself, the stress of the coronavirus, I think people are just sort of saying, time out. I need to catch my breath. Think of it as a long-term reprieve or vacation, because what I'm seeing in the data is that people come back to jobs where they were offered more money, better benefits. So I think it's a little bit of people saying, time out, I need a break. I'm willing to come back to work, but not right now. But if you offered me more money, better benefits, I may accelerate the fact I'll come back to work. I do think it's hurting a lot of industries, obviously, but I think some business owners are going to say, what can I do? Because it's only going to be a matter of time before they're going to have to break, right? They're going to be like, I can't do this. I have to hire people, and they're going to have to pull that lever of either increased salary, increased benefits, increased flexibility. So because you do see people jumping into other areas that have higher pay, maybe better benefits, and a greater opportunity for a trajectory of opportunities.
Man, I've just witnessed, just in the families that I know and are surrounded with, how challenging it's been for young families that have children. And they're like, okay, the children are home sometimes, or at school sometimes, or they're locked down and they have to stay at home for 6 months. And, how in the world can they adjust babysitting to that kind of crazy schedule? I've seen, families that just had to say, no, one of us is staying home. This doesn't work any other way. Not only for just to try to make logistics work with a family, but for safety reasons too. I was working in a frontline environment. I'm exposed constantly. I'm coming home to the kids. That's just not going to work for me.
Right. People are making a decision. They're making a decision with their feet and saying, we have to realize, the world has never seen what happened to us in the last two and a half years. And even what we're seeing now with Putin's war. In my mind, I was just like taking a breath saying, all right, it looks like things are opening up. And I think it was like 48 hours when I said, wow, okay, things are looking good. And all of a sudden there's the Putin war. So we have to understand that for a good 2.5, now almost 3 years, that the whole world's been under stress. And I think people just sort of said enough. And it's not just stress in this fact of, hey, I need a break. It's a stress of reevaluation of people's lives and what matters. And people are really going to say, that little stuff, I'm no longer worried about that. I'm on the board of long-term COVID survivors, and the stories that are being told at the highest level of how many children lost their parents and how many people had passed away and relatives. I think people are really just readjusting what matters to them. And it's okay to say no to my boss.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's okay to say, look, this is not what I want to do. I have choices. I want to have more flexibility. Now, some people don't have that, right? If you're a fireman or a police officer or, right, you have some flexibility, but some positions you don't. But I think overall, people are just reevaluating their lives. And part of that is just saying, time out. I need to think about this, but I'll be back.
Yeah. So you live there in the New York City area. Talk to us about, are people all going back to work, or do you think there'll be more long-term hybrid modes where they'll still go back to work, but maybe it's only 2 days a week?
Yeah. So what I've been seeing and feeling and watching the data is going to work 5 days a week to an office is over. I don't think it's ever coming back. I think you could force people to do it, like you have some investment firms, legal firms doing it. But I think it's forced, right? At some point, people are going to say, I don't want to be doing this. I think what's really going to happen is, and what people are beckoning for, is flexibility, right? 2 days in, 3 days in, 2 days from home. I think after being home for COVID and saving all that money and realizing you could be highly productive without going to the office, without having to spend money on lunch, without having to pay for transportation. And in New York City, you know, I think personally, growing up from New York, an hour commute's acceptable. Most people frown on that, right? But coming from New York, an hour commute, I'm okay with that. But people realize, look, I got an hour going in, an hour coming back. Is it worth it? And I really think people are just saying, hold on, I'm happy to go to the office, but I don't want to do it every day, right? Especially on a Friday, on a summer day, finish up work, go fishing, go do what you want, be with your kids, go to school activities. So what this is saying really is not only the ability to go to work in an office, people want that and they want to be with people, but they want flexibility. They don't want to be tied down Monday through Friday living in that office anymore. I think those days are over. I don't think it's ever going to come back.
So in this new world that you're envisioning, is that, or should that impact the way we educate our kids for the future and for the kinds of jobs that are going to be out there? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I'm not too sure if we should call it education. In my mind, I see it as the fundamentals of education, and then I have this other category called training. And I also don't believe everyone should go to college. Look, this guy teaches at all these schools, he has a PhD. And I'm not saying everyone should go to college, and not because they're not qualified. But at the end of the day, there are people who love to learn at a very high sophisticated level. And there's other people really, really smart, but education isn't the way to go. You could do just as well in a field by taking a certification with Google or Microsoft, being certified in SEO. I also think, you know, being an auto mechanic. I mean, in Connecticut, in New York, you're making 6 figures. And some people are really, really handy, right? I had one student who was really handy as a mechanic, and he was in my class. I'm thinking, like, why are you in my class? Like, this doesn't make any sense. You really love automobiles. Like, you should be working on a racing team or something. But why? And he's like, well, you know, my parents said I have to go get a degree. I'm like, I don't think this makes any sense to me. So if we look for the future, I think what's really going to happen is that you're going to have your traditional bachelor's, master's degree programs. But I envision, I just literally had this conversation with a director of a major university in Connecticut here about tying these two pieces together. There's no reason why you can't become a high-level mechanic and attach that to a bachelor's degree, or go to get a bachelor's degree and tie into being a plumber or an electrician. I don't understand why they could have to be so separated. I know in Connecticut, there's a school here that, you know, trains people in tradesmanship. They're all making 6 figures and they're all called for, right? They're everyone 100% employment. We can't get enough people who are plumbers, electricians. I mean, it's just off the charts. And I'm not too sure if it's a PR thing or people think down on themselves, but I think people are crazy. I mean, you can make a great living.
You know, here in the Mountain West, I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but to try to get a good plumber or electrician or just a skilled worker to come by and do a project at the house, it is really difficult with
very hard,
a lot of money and big waiting lists. So yes, and I love you bringing up auto mechanics, because I know that's your hobby, your new hobby.
My new hobby, yeah. Yeah, so my wife says, look, you don't have any hobbies. I said, well, I love teaching, I love working, I love running companies, right? I'm good at it. But she said, you don't have any hobbies. So I was like, all right, I guess you're right. I should go do something. I was a kid, me and my friends used to build cars, right? Yeah. We'd take them apart and build. So just recently, in the last 6 months, I said, wow, you know, I think I could do better than a mechanic. And mechanics are very expensive. So for Christmas, I got some tools and everything. So now I have a 2-car garage. One's called Bay 1. The other one's called Bay 2. So I do your typical, oil changes, differential fluid, oil, transaxle fluid, serpentine belts, brakes, so all that stuff. But I sort of enjoy it because I'm thinking about it, figuring it out, and making it all work. And plus, I save a lot of money, right? So I try to balance the two out. But I find it mentally challenging And I'm saying, like, this isn't easy work. I mean, I have a PhD. I mean, I have to figure out how all these brakes work. And I'm thinking like, wow, but I also try to do plumbing work and electrical work. To your point, Kevin, it's so hard to find someone. So I'm educating myself on both these worlds as I'm running these companies. I'm also like, okay, let me get my mechanical skills and automotive skills up to snuff, because it is so hard to find people.
Oh, absolutely. So I had my pandemic hobby too. I bought an old Jeep, just a beat up Jeep. And I've had so much fun just, learning the terminology and reading the manuals and trying to fix all the old stuff. I got a Jeep where the paint job is camouflage. So all you have to do is spray more black or green on it.
Yeah, that's fun.
Scratch. Pretty funny. Anyway, so you and I both have that. So let's talk about, I'm seeing a lot of development and progress on digital assistants and AI. And I can see how these digital assistants can be assigned to students, to workers. So there's almost a very smart digital twin of each of us as well. What's your take on that?
So I agree with it. So I've been doing a lot of research on this, and there's some really interesting companies out there, and I call them digital agents. So a company would hire someone like yourself or myself or students, and they would say, here's your job. But the future I see is that you and I, when we're working, have sort of help called a computer, right? The next level of our connection will be something called a digital agent, a natural language processing AI system that would actually be your coworker who does something really well that you would manage it and making it more efficient. Take something as simple as a chatbot, right? That's very low level, very linear type of when a person connects with a company, right? What I'm talking about is actually having a digital agent, non-human being, who could actually make that transaction happen for that person online. If you have an insurance company and you have a claim, that digital agent can take you from accident to payment without touching a human being. But that digital agent may report to you and me that we're monitoring and controlling it and trying to make it better. Like, I envision that the workforce of tomorrow will be people like me and you, but part of in our org chart will be a bunch of digital agents. There aren't humans, but they're machine learning, AI systems, natural language processing systems. There's a really cool company called IP Soft. They created this thing called Amelia. And it's truly the closest thing that I've ever seen to a digital agent and really close to a human being, where you could transact from A to Z without ever touching a human being. It's the most advanced system that I've ever seen. Natural language processing. It speaks 132 languages. Wow. So what I'm seeing is that we would have the idea of work, your traditional idea, but my coworkers may be digital agents, not necessarily human beings. I also see that the future of work and what work means may be very different to what we think it is, because where work happens will be changing. When work happens will be changing, and how work happens will be changing. So the future of work really has to be modified and transformed to meet the societal needs of what people are demanding. I also have seen a lot of concept of work where the future of work is not working. And let me try to explain this. So everyone looks for active income and passive income. Passive income is like, I own an apartment building, I work 1 day a week, 1 day a month, and I collect rent. So it's a big push in American society to try to have passive income. It's like having a stock portfolio and have companies pay you dividend. You're making money without actually doing a lot of any work, right? You do your initial piece, or writing a book, right? You write the book and then it sells. That's passive income. I see a huge movement with the ability to start your company, because it's very easy. Opening up an e-com company using Shopify. You could have your day job and at night build out your passive income company. So what I'm envisioning, and I see this accelerate pretty quickly, is that the goal of work may be not to work, but still have all these sources of passive income, not active income, but passive income, where you're generating revenue. And And I think a lot of people may also then combine the concept of these digital agents, and then you sort of rent them out to people. So you could have like staff aug, but they're not real people. They're things that you've built, and you could then rent them out to different companies to actually do different types of activity. So I'm thinking in the future here about maybe the real meaning of work is not work. It's the idea of really just trying to figure out how you could generate revenue without actually doing anything.
I love it. I love it. I think a lot of what you're saying there aligns exactly with what I see in my day job here as a futurist as well. So, some people, the big criticism of the automation and robotics is that it potentially can disintermediate people from their jobs or their revenue sources. So they lose work. It's a technological unemployment because robots took your job. Now you have one side of the argument is going to say, look, every time there's new innovation happens, jobs just move away to a new sector, and new sectors expand and absorb those unemployed. Well, others saying that this is different because automation can cover everything. What's your take on it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think if you look at what's happening now, that we have sort of, we'll go with my term of the big pause, where people are saying, hey, I need a break. People who normally, let's say hypothetically, young kids say, I need a break. I'm not going to work at McDonald's this summer. But McDonald's still needs someone to flip the burgers. And McDonald's is saying, look, I can't get people. There's a minimum wage of $15. It's hard to get people. No one really likes flipping the burgers. So they put a lot of money in a robotic arm to flip the burgers, which actually does a better job than human beings. So because of the pressure on them to actually still produce the hamburger, they've basically said, my competition is no longer this high school student, it's this high school student compared to buying a robotic arm. So I think there's a lot of legs to this. You think about even my first job when we were talking about, real jobs, right? Besides bagging, I worked my way up to being a cashier. When I go to the supermarket, I check myself out because of the technology. Right. So there is I believe there's going to be a lot of people who aren't going to be happy because the jobs they normally will get is not going to go to their friends or someone else. It's actually going to be eliminated or be taken over by some sort of robotic technology, either a robotic arm or a digital agent, because the companies and society is saying we can't get those jobs anymore. No one wanted to do those jobs. And people are saying it's too expensive now to have these low-level jobs. They're saying a better way to do this is use technology. So I think it's a little bit of that. Human beings are really good at three things. One is we're really good at working with each other, right? There's no other human being or animal in the world that we and you and me could work together. It doesn't at the level that we're talking about to have a company or organization with a core focus. The other thing that makes us really interesting is this thumb. This thumb is very powerful because we're the only ones who could do this in the world, right? We're the only animal that could do this, which means we could build almost anything. And the third thing is that we're extremely creative. Now, you could argue we're innovative, but creativity, innovation is really the commercialization of creativity. We create new things, which is infinite. We just tap into it. So will people lose jobs to technology? Yes. You asked me a question about white-collar workers and blue-collar workers. Will white-collar workers be impacted by technology taking their jobs? Yes. Attorneys, lawyers, doctors will all be impacted, in my opinion. Will they not be able to get jobs? No, they're going to get jobs, but they're going to be very different jobs. So what we have to realize is that the only constant in the world is constant, unadulterated change. We have to get used to it, comfortable with it, plan for it, that things will change. The other thing that in my research that I see is the only other constant, people always wanting to be belonging to something, people wanting to be part of a community. So those two things will always be with us. The third thing, which I think is very interesting, and this comes from the federal government, is that they did a study of different types of jobs, right? So Apple, Genius Bar, web developer, mobile app developer, these are all relatively new jobs. Every 7 years, we have completely different jobs coming to market. So what you have to be aware of is the job you have today and the job you're going to have in 7 years from now may not even exist. Just be open-minded and look for some of the trends that you could hook on. And one accelerator for you to be very marketable is to be educated in the traditional way of formal education, certificate training, reading, writing, and networking. Networking on a human level, because there's really no replacement for, that is going to be the norm now.
So you brought up already, we've all struggled with the pandemic. Now we have Putin's war to deal with. And it seems to be increasingly, it's going to be problematic for months, if not years ahead of us. It is going to change a great deal, given the nature that so much food, global food, is coming from that region of the world. So much of the fertilizer that the world uses comes from that region. So there's just going to be a huge bunch of changes there. Because of all these struggles, we've seen a lot of interest from companies wanting to relocalize work. Instead of having these long, lean supply chains where they're getting products from the most distant regions of the world because they can save a penny or two on labor, they're saying, you know what, we're going to have an automated factory anyway. That can be anywhere because labor costs aren't involved or very little. So we're going to bring back our production from, let's say, China, and we're going to bring it back to Michigan, and we're going to create an automated factory. So it's not going to be that big a deal. How do you see that kind of interest potentially affecting the jobs of the future?
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think people are worried globally. The idea of offshoring and onshoring, I think, is very valid because of what's happening in the global world. And it's no longer this idea of human capital arbitrage. We're going to go around the world and try to get the cheapest person to do the job. And the minute it goes down by a penny, I move it out of that country, I go to another country. I think we have a perfect storm between data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence, robotics, all coming in to say, yep, I can move my factory back, and also 3D printing, right? Manufacturing. So I think we're at the perfect storm where American companies, if they choose to say, yeah, I could bring it back in Idaho, I could bring it back to Kansas, I could bring it back to Michigan, not incur the massive labor costs I normally would have, but I will bring in the robotics and bring in a smaller staff. Similar to what we have now, actually, when you look at most of the foreign companies like a Toyota or a Honda that actually produce in North America, they have a small staff of people, and it's mostly done by robotics. So I see a lot more of that. I think because of the trouble that everyone got in with this idea of the supply chain, people are really now thinking about when the next virus happens or the next major event happens, I want to be prepared. And it's very interesting because even the local pizzeria person and some of the restaurants I see in New York are really now trying to always have a drive-through and or a patio, because no longer are they just saying, I'm going to do one channel of people coming in just through the door and sitting down. I want takeout, I want sit down. And if there is another virus or anything, I'm going to have my patio all set up. I'm ready to go. One thing that humans are really good at is adaptability if we allow ourselves to do this. Companies will adapt to the supply chain. They will bring things closer to home. Consumers will adjust to what that supply chain is. Americans who are used to getting what they want when they want it immediately, I think those days are over for the next 2 or 3 years, and then we'll probably come back. I think American consumers are basically saying, there are things I want and there are things I need. I'm okay focusing on the things I need: food, water, clothing, shelter. And I'm okay giving up some of the stuff that are really just wants. And I think people are really, manufacturers specifically, are saying, this is a really good opportunity to reevaluate exactly from end to end what we do, which is really true, true digital transformation at the core, is how do we reimagine our entire company being more digital, more efficient, more effective, and not being impacted by any external forces. And that goes, Kevin, to your point about bringing it closer to home to have more control. that also then looks at the airline industry, which makes a lot of their money from business travels, right? We were just talking about that before. Is there a need for all this big, massive air travel? Well, what you really see is that people close major deals just on Zoom without ever traveling. That is a major change. Now, I think that you have to really meet the person at least once, face to face, mano to mano. But after that, that relationship could be just as solid as a Zoom call.
Got it. So, Paul, last question. What advice do you give to the students in all your various classes across these universities about what they should do to prepare for a career?
Even those 7.5 billion people in the world, you are the only person in the world. You are very special. So the goal is to find your passion, right? What is it? What is that passion that really drives you? What is that? What is your purpose, right? And can you stick with it, which is your grit? And what really are you going to put back into society? What is it that you're going to try to do? And always, always keep what I call the sword sharp mentally. Reading, writing, exposing, thinking about things, meeting new people, getting different experiences. Because what I tell them is everything I'm telling you is a snapshot. The minute you graduate, your education is everything that you didn't forget. But there is a snapshot of this, right? If you go to law school or medical school, you have that moment of time of knowledge and then you go out. You have to constantly be learning, right? We were talking about me learning about automotive, right? It's interesting. I'm always trying to figure out new things. I'm reading new things. I'm trying to experience new things. But you always have to keep moving. Look for the trends, right? Look for trends are really good, right? Data analytics, robotics, human nature, human capital. And most importantly, have fun. Right? I mean, have fun what you're doing. I think the days of just plugging into these jobs and being miserable are over. I think people have a lot of options right now. And I think those options are going to stay with us for a good 10 years. And work with really good people. I think people are really are saying, look, I don't only want to make money. I want to work with really good people. And if I can't find those good people, I'm leaving. That's what people are telling me.
Oh, that's brilliant. I want to thank you so much, Paul.
Yeah, thanks,
time out of your busy teaching and managing schedule to just
thanks,
give us some of your impressions, your insight, and your wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah, excellent.